It was just another ordinary evening when their phone buzzed with a notification. A message from their auntie. Nothing unusual, she would often send random forwarded texts, religious quotes, or family updates. But this time, it wasn't a text. It was a video. The file was larger than usual, taking a few extra seconds to load. Curious, they tapped on it without thinking much. As soon as the video started playing, the air in the room seemed to change. At first, it was just the familiar voices of their family in the background, laughter mixed with casual conversation. But then, their own name was mentioned. Their ears perked up. The laughter took a sharper edge, turning into something else, something cruel. Honestly, they're such a pathetic failure, their mother's voice rang out, followed by a snicker. I know, right? Always trying to prove something but never actually achieving anything, their cousin chimed in, sounding amused. I sometimes wonder if we should just stop pretending. Maybe if we tell them straight to their face, they'll finally get it, another voice added. It was their uncle. The protagonist froze, unable to believe what they were hearing. Their heart pounded in their chest, hands trembling as they held the phone closer, as if that would somehow change the words being spoken. They actually think they have potential, their father scoffed. It's embarrassing. No ambition, no success, just a burden. A sharp, gut-wrenching pain twisted in their stomach. Every word felt like a stab, each laugh like salt being rubbed into fresh wounds. They wanted to stop watching, to turn it off and pretend they hadn't seen it. But their hands wouldn't move. Their eyes stayed glued to the screen, as if they were trapped in a nightmare. The video wasn't just a stray conversation, it was a full-blown roast session at their expense. Their failures were listed one by one, each mistake they had ever made turned into a joke. Their struggles, the things they had confided in their family, were being mocked like some sort of sick entertainment. Tears burned in their eyes, but they refused to let them fall. Their body was stiff, their breath shallow. Was this how their family truly saw them? Were all the words of encouragement, all the "we believe in you" talks, just a lie? Their mind raced, trying to grasp the situation. Maybe this was taken out of context? Maybe it was just dark humor? But the laughter in the background told a different story. This wasn't playful teasing. This was real. They meant every single word. They replayed the video, hoping they had misheard something, that maybe their mind was playing tricks on them. But no, it was all there, clear as day. The people they had trusted the most, the people who were supposed to love them unconditionally, saw them as nothing more than a joke. Anger started bubbling under the surface, mixing with the pain and humiliation. How could they do this? How could they sit together, laugh at them, and not even think twice? The worst part was that their auntie hadn't meant to send this. This was supposed to stay private, a secret conversation behind their back. A shaky breath escaped their lips as they locked their phone screen and stared blankly at the wall. The room around them felt colder, emptier. The silence was deafening. Everything suddenly made sense, the passive-aggressive remarks, the dismissive looks, the lack of real support whenever they tried to do something meaningful. It wasn't in their head. It had always been there, lurking beneath fake smiles and forced words of encouragement. They gripped the phone tightly, their nails digging into their palm. This wasn't just betrayal. This was humiliation. And they weren't going to sit back and pretend they hadn't seen it. Something inside them shifted. The pain didn't disappear, but it hardened into something else. A quiet, simmering rage. They weren't going to cry over this. No. They were going to make sure every single one of them regretted it. And this time, it wouldn't be them feeling like a failure. Their finger hovered over the play button. They had already watched the video twice, but something inside them kept pushing. Maybe they had misheard. Maybe there was some context they were missing. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't what it seemed. They pressed play again. The same cruel words filled the air. The same laughter. The same mocking tones. Each time they listened, it cut deeper, carving wounds they weren't sure would ever heal. They tried to focus on the tone, searching for even the slightest hint that it was all just a joke, something harmless, something they could brush off. But no matter how hard they tried, the truth stared back at them, undeniable and brutal. This was real. Their family, the people they had trusted, the people they had defended, the people they had sacrificed so much for, had never truly respected them. Their throat felt tight as memories began surfacing, one after another, like waves crashing violently against the shore. They remembered their mother's warm hugs when they were younger, the way she used to stroke their hair and say, "You're going to do amazing things one day." But had she ever really believed it? Or was that just something parents were supposed to say? Their father's proud smile when they graduated high school, was that real? Or was he just going through the motions, pretending, while deep down, he thought they were nothing but a disappointment? Every birthday, every holiday, every moment they thought was filled with love and support suddenly felt tainted. How many of those smiles were fake? How many words of encouragement were nothing more than empty gestures? A lump formed in their throat. They had spent years seeking validation, working hard to prove themselves, to make their family proud. They had pushed themselves past their limits, hoping that one day they'd hear their parents say, "We're proud of you." But now they knew the truth. They had never been enough. Tears welled in their eyes, blurring the screen of their phone. They wiped them away quickly, as if refusing to let their family win, even from a distance. But it was impossible to ignore the sinking feeling in their chest, the realization that they had spent their entire life trying to please people who never saw them as worthy. Flashes of conversations they had dismissed before now made sense. "Why don't you do something more practical?" their uncle had once said when they talked about their dreams. At the time, they had brushed it off as casual advice, but now they saw it for what it was, hidden condescension. "It's okay, not everyone is meant for success," their cousin had joked last year. Back then, they had laughed along, thinking it was harmless. But was it? Or was it just another moment where they had been the punchline of a joke they didn't even realize was being made at their expense? Everything suddenly felt like a lie. The family dinners, the words of encouragement, the "we're always here for you," all of it, fake. Their hands clenched into fists. How stupid had they been? How blind? They had spent so long trying to belong, trying to prove their worth, trying to earn their family's love. But love wasn't supposed to be earned. It wasn't supposed to be conditional. A bitter laugh escaped their lips, hollow and empty. All this time, they had thought they were fighting for their family's approval. But now they realized, there was nothing to fight for. The illusion had shattered. And from the broken pieces, something else emerged. A new, colder version of themselves. One that no longer cared about seeking validation. One that was done being the fool. One that was ready to make them all pay. Days passed, but the sting of the video never faded. If anything, it grew sharper, cutting deeper every time their mind replayed those words. Sleep became a distant memory. Every time they closed their eyes, they heard the laughter again, louder, crueler, echoing in the quiet darkness of their room. They stopped answering calls. Messages from friends piled up, unread. Even when their phone buzzed with concerned texts, "Hey, are you okay?" they ignored them. What was the point? No one could understand the kind of betrayal they felt. The people who were supposed to love them the most had shredded every last piece of their self-worth. The walls of their room felt smaller, pressing in on them as if the weight of their family's words had taken physical form. Days blurred together. They barely ate. Hours were spent sitting in silence, staring at nothing, drowning in a whirlwind of anger, humiliation, and sadness. When they finally did leave the house, it felt like everyone was watching them, like the world knew their family thought they were a failure. Even casual conversations felt heavy, their mind twisting innocent remarks into veiled insults. At one point, they bumped into their best friend at a coffee shop. "You've been ghosting me," their friend said, offering a worried smile. "What's going on?" They wanted to speak, to unload the pain weighing them down, but the words wouldn't come. How could they explain the depth of betrayal without sounding pathetic? What would anyone think if they admitted that their own family didn't believe in them? "I'm fine," they lied, their voice colder than they intended. Their friend frowned, searching their face for answers. "You don't seem fine." "I said I'm fine," they snapped, pushing past them and leaving the conversation hanging in the air. By the time they reached home, the anger bubbling under their skin had reached a boiling point. For days, they had tried to rationalize what they heard, hoping to find some excuse, some reason to forgive. But no reason existed. Their family had mocked them behind their back, and the accidental video was proof that no matter how hard they tried, they would never be enough in their eyes. Something inside them cracked. The sadness began to fade, replaced by a cold, burning resolve. If their family thought they were a failure, they were going to show them what failure really looked like. Revenge wasn't just an option, it was the only way to regain control. They wouldn't cry over this anymore. Those tears had been wasted on people who didn't deserve them. It was time to stop being the one everyone laughed at. It was time to remind their family that every action had consequences. And they were just getting started. The first step was simple: silence. They would pull back, retreat even further, making sure no one suspected a thing. If their family wanted to talk behind their back, let them. The more they thought the pathetic failure was too weak to fight back, the easier it would be to strike when the time was right. In the days that followed, they began observing carefully. Any time their family texted the group chat, they paid attention. Each conversation revealed little cracks, hidden insecurities, secrets waiting to be exposed. They started piecing together information, noting every weakness, every vulnerable spot their family tried to hide. Their auntie, always bragging about her perfect marriage, had a habit of flirting with strangers online. Their uncle, the loudest voice in the video, was drowning in secret debt. And their cousin? The golden child? Let's just say the world didn't know half of what they did behind closed doors. It was all there, fissures in the foundation, ready to break wide open. And they had the power to make it happen. Late at night, they sat in the glow of their computer screen, carefully crafting anonymous messages. Fake social media accounts were easy to create, and even easier to use when exposing hidden truths. Each piece of information they uncovered became a weapon, one they planned to wield with precision. But revenge wasn't just about exposure. It was about making them feel what they had felt: powerless, humiliated, small. When their phone buzzed with another family message, another fake "hope you're doing well" from the same people who had torn them apart, they didn't feel sadness anymore. They felt something else: power. For the first time in weeks, a smile crept across their lips. Not the warm, hopeful kind, the kind that comes when you know something no one else does. Their family thought they had broken them. They had no idea what was coming next. Revenge wasn't just an impulse anymore, it was a mission. A carefully constructed plan that would ensure every single one of them felt the same humiliation, the same powerlessness, the same sense of betrayal. They sat in the dim glow of their laptop screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. This wasn't going to be reckless. No, this needed precision. Every move had to be calculated, every strike timed perfectly. They had spent years being the family's afterthought, the joke they laughed about behind closed doors. But now, they would be the one pulling the strings. The first step, information. They had always been observant, even when they didn't realize it. People underestimated how much they noticed, the way their aunt clutched her phone a little too tightly when her husband walked into the room, the way their uncle changed the topic whenever money was discussed, the way their golden child cousin lied so easily and got away with it every time. But now, those little details weren't just observations. They were weapons. They started digging. Aunt Linda was always posting about her perfect marriage on Facebook, smiling selfies with her husband, long paragraphs about how love conquers all. But what people didn't see were the secret conversations on her hidden Instagram account. It didn't take long to find. One wrong password reset attempt, a little patience, and there it was, private messages to a man who was definitely not her husband. Flirty texts. Late-night confessions. Pictures she wouldn't want the world to see. One weakness uncovered. Uncle Greg, the loudest one in the video, loved lecturing everyone about responsibility. "You need to be smarter with your money," he'd say, shaking his head at anyone who dared to make a financial mistake. But the reality? He was drowning in debt. A few deep dives into local property records, some well-placed online searches, and there it was, past due notices, loans he couldn't pay back, credit cards maxed out. He wasn't the financial genius he pretended to be. If anything, he was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. 2 weaknesses. And then there was Cousin Daniel, the perfect one, the family's pride, the one who could do no wrong. They had always known something was off with him. He was too good at lying, too smooth when covering his tracks. So they watched. Followed his social media closely. Paid attention to who liked his posts, who commented the most. It didn't take long to find her, a girl he had been secretly seeing while still in a relationship with his long-term girlfriend. A few fake accounts later, and they had screenshots. Texts. Pictures. 3 weaknesses. Their family had always acted like they were better, like they were untouchable. But the truth was, they were just as flawed, worse, even, because they hid their sins while pretending to be perfect. Now came the fun part, strategy. It would be easy to drop everything at once. A single email, a mass text, a social media blast, and all their dirty secrets would be out in the open. But no, that wasn't satisfying enough. They wanted their family to feel the same slow, creeping dread that had consumed them since the moment they watched that video. They wanted the fear to sink in, for the paranoia to eat them alive before the truth fully hit. Step 1: Anonymous warnings. Aunt Linda would receive a message from an unknown number. "Does your husband know about your late-night chats? You might want to be careful who you trust." No details. Just enough to make her panic, to make her wonder if someone was watching. Uncle Greg would wake up to a forwarded email from a concerned party. A collection of his overdue bills, evidence of his financial troubles, with a simple note: "The truth always comes out." Let him squirm, let him fear that his perfect image was about to shatter. And Cousin Daniel? A fake Instagram account would follow both him and his girlfriend, liking old posts, dropping cryptic comments. Funny how loyalty only exists when no one's watching. Let the doubt settle in before the final blow. Step 2: Public exposure. Timing was everything. Linda's husband would get an email at work, containing every screenshot, every message she had sent to her secret lover. No explanation. Just proof. Greg's financial records would find their way into the hands of his business partners. Let them see the man they trusted was nothing more than a fraud. And Daniel's girlfriend? She would receive everything in a neat little package: pictures, texts, undeniable proof of his betrayal. One by one, their family's lies would unravel. And there was nothing they could do to stop it. They leaned back in their chair, exhaling slowly. The plan was perfect. The people who had torn them down, who had mocked them, who had seen them as a failure. Soon, they would know what it felt like to lose everything. And the best part? They would never see it coming. The plan was in motion. Every detail had been carefully mapped out, every move calculated to inflict maximum damage. But patience was key. This wasn't about a quick burst of revenge, this was about destruction, slow and merciless. They sat in front of their laptop, staring at a fresh, empty social media profile. A blank slate. No name, no personal details, just a generic profile picture pulled from the internet. The first of many. With a few clicks, the account was set up, then another, and another. Each one had a different purpose. One for Aunt Linda's secret, another for Uncle Greg's financial mess, and one just waiting for the perfect moment to expose Cousin Daniel's lies. Anonymous. Untraceable. The first step was planting seeds of doubt. A vague comment here, a subtle hint there. Nothing too obvious. Just enough to make them paranoid. But social media alone wouldn't be enough. They needed proof, undeniable, inescapable proof. For days, they played the part of the obedient, quiet family member. If their family had noticed their withdrawal before, they now made sure to appear normal, blending into the background just enough to avoid suspicion. Then, they started recording. Every dinner conversation, every careless whisper, every moment of arrogance their family displayed, they captured it all. A tiny recording app on their phone, always running in the background. They asked casual questions, pretending to be interested in their family's gossip. They let their aunt rant about her husband, let their uncle grumble about money, let their cousin brag about how easy it was to lie to his girlfriend. Every word was a weapon, stored and ready to be used when the time was right. But even the sharpest weapons needed the right hands to wield them. That's when they turned to the others, the forgotten members of the family, the ones who had also been cast aside, dismissed, or overlooked. It started with a quiet conversation with their cousin, Mia. "You ever feel like no matter what you do, this family never really respects you?" they asked casually, testing the waters. Mia scoffed. "Respect me? They don't even acknowledge me unless they need something. The only time Aunt Linda calls is when she needs help planning a party she won't even invite me to." Bingo! Mia wasn't just frustrated, she was bitter. Just like them. A few more conversations with extended family members revealed similar resentment. Their uncle's ex-wife still nursed old wounds, their other cousin had been brushed aside too many times to count, and even some of their parents' so-called friends had complaints they had never voiced. It was astonishing how many people carried grudges, waiting for the right moment to strike. So they gave them that moment. Subtly, carefully, they started sharing what they had found. Nothing too incriminating, just small pieces of information, enough to stoke the flames of resentment. "Did you know Uncle Greg has been lying about his finances for years? Makes you wonder what else he's hiding. Crazy how Aunt Linda acts like she's happily married, huh? If only people knew the truth. You ever notice how Daniel gets away with everything? Bet his girlfriend wouldn't be so loyal if she knew half of what he's done." The reactions were exactly what they had hoped for. Shock. Anger. Interest. Slowly, they were building an army, a network of people who had their own reasons to see this family fall apart. And the best part? Not a single person suspected where the information was coming from. The final piece of the setup was timing. A carefully orchestrated symphony of chaos that would play out exactly as planned. The anonymous accounts would start dropping hints. The recordings, the screenshots, the undeniable evidence, each one would be released strategically, just enough to make their targets panic but not enough for them to trace it back. And when their family finally started realizing what was happening, when the cracks in their perfect facade began to show, that's when the real fun would begin. Because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about making sure they never underestimated them again. And by the time they were done, their family would be the ones begging for forgiveness. But forgiveness wasn't on the table. Not anymore. It was time. The setup was complete, the pieces were in place, and now all that remained was the execution. They had waited long enough, had listened to their family's mocking words replay in their head too many times. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. About finally making them feel the weight of their own cruelty. The first target? Aunt Linda. She had always been the family's shining example of perfection, the devoted wife, the loving mother, the woman who acted like she had it all figured out. But they knew the truth. They had the messages. The pictures. The proof that she was nothing more than a liar hiding behind a carefully crafted image. The message was simple. No explanations. No threats. Just pure, undeniable proof. They sent it directly to her husband's phone. A few screenshots of her flirty conversations. A couple of messages where she talked about sneaking away for a private weekend. And then, the final blow, a picture she had sent to her secret lover, the kind no married woman should ever send to someone who wasn't her husband. Delivered. They set the phone down, heart pounding, waiting. Minutes passed. Then an hour. And then, boom. The explosion came all at once. First, a message in the family group chat. It was from Aunt Linda's husband. No words, just one of the screenshots, pasted right there for the entire family to see. For a few seconds, nothing happened. No replies. No reactions. Then, like a dam breaking, the flood of messages began. What the hell is this? Linda, you need to explain this right now. Please tell me this is fake. Linda? Silence. No response from her. Then, a single message appeared. I can't believe this. And just like that, chaos erupted. One by one, family members began calling her out, demanding explanations, speculating in real time. Aunt Linda, the woman who always had a smug comment for everyone else's mistakes, was now completely exposed. And the best part? She had no idea who had done it. Her husband wasn't just angry, he was humiliated. The man who had always held himself with pride, who had once told the protagonist that a real partner never betrays their family, now he was the one betrayed. He left the group chat. His next move was predictable, he would confront Linda in person. And the protagonist? They just sat back and watched it all unfold. They didn't have to wait long. Not even 30 minutes later, another message appeared in the group chat. Someone is trying to tear this family apart. Aunt Linda. She was scrambling, trying to regain control. Instead of addressing what had been exposed, she was shifting the blame, trying to turn everyone's attention away from her and onto something else. Classic. But no one was buying it. Her husband wasn't responding. Other family members were too busy whispering among themselves, already forming their own opinions. And then, the first accusation flew. Why do I feel like someone in the family sent this? They smirked. Of course, the paranoia was settling in. Another message. Who else would know about this? It had to be someone close. Then another. Maybe this wasn't just about Linda. What if there's more coming? Perfect. They leaned back, hearts still racing with adrenaline. The fear was spreading. They weren't just exposing one person, they were planting the idea that none of them were safe. That this was just the beginning. And they weren't wrong. Aunt Linda was only the first move. The opening strike. There were still plenty of secrets waiting to be revealed, and with the way everyone was already on edge, it wouldn't take much to push them over the edge. Now, all they had to do was wait. Because once people started turning on each other, once they started digging into their own families' lives out of fear, the real destruction would begin. And by the time it was all over, the people who had once laughed at them, who had mocked them behind their back, would be the ones begging for mercy. But there would be none. Not anymore. The first blow had landed, but the real destruction was only beginning. Aunt Linda's scandal had sent shockwaves through the family, but now, the paranoia was taking root. Everyone was on edge, afraid that they might be next. And they were right to be. The protagonist watched as accusations flew, voices were raised, and trust disintegrated before their eyes. One carefully timed leak after another, small, precise revelations that exposed hidden betrayals, secret grudges, and long-buried lies. Uncle Greg's financial troubles came next. An anonymous message sent to his business partners, revealing just how deep in debt he truly was. The family chat erupted again. "Greg, is this true?" But he was too busy trying to salvage what was left of his reputation to respond. Then, Cousin Daniel's perfect image shattered. His girlfriend received the proof of his infidelity just as he was desperately trying to calm the chaos. His betrayal spread like wildfire, and suddenly, he was the one being called a liar, a fraud, a disappointment. With every move, the family unraveled further. They had built their lives on lies. The protagonist was simply making sure the truth came out, at the perfect moment, every time. And there was still more to come. It didn't take long for them to figure it out. The family had been in chaos for days, accusations, screaming matches, broken relationships, but now, all that anger had a direction. They finally realized who had been pulling the strings. Who had been exposing their lies, one by one. The phone rang. Then again. Then again. Ignored. Then, a furious knock at the door. Louder this time. More urgent. They opened it to find a storm of furious faces, Aunt Linda, Uncle Greg, Cousin Daniel, and a few others who had suffered from the carefully placed revelations. Their expressions were a mix of rage, shame, and desperation. "How could you do this to your own family?" Linda hissed. "You destroyed us." Greg added. The protagonist let them speak, let them spew excuses, justifications, weak attempts to shift the blame. They didn't flinch. Finally, they spoke. "Destroyed you?" "No. I just made sure you felt the same humiliation you put me through. The difference is, everything I revealed was true." Silence. No more lies. No more pretense. For the first time, they saw their family for what they truly were, weak, broken, and utterly exposed. And it wasn't over yet. The dust had settled, but the scars remained. Some family members tried to salvage what little dignity they had left. Aunt Linda, her voice trembling, muttered an apology that felt more like an obligation than true remorse. Uncle Greg barely looked them in the eye, mumbling something about family sticking together, as if that excuse could erase years of betrayal. But others? They remained defiant. Cousin Daniel scoffed, arms crossed. "You think this makes you better than us?" he sneered. "You're just as cruel." The protagonist laughed, calm, unshaken. "No, Daniel. I'm just honest. A concept you wouldn't understand. No more begging for approval. No more trying to fit into a family that never truly cared." With a final glance at the people who had once broken them, they turned away, free for the first time. They rebuilt, stronger than ever. No longer seeking validation, no longer haunted by the past. And when success finally came, when their achievements were undeniable, the same family who had mocked them watched from the sidelines. Some still whispered, some still held grudges. But none of them could deny it. The protagonist had won. and they would never be a pathetic failure again. Months had passed. The family was barely holding itself together, fractured, humiliated, drowning in their own betrayals. Relationships were severed, trust shattered beyond repair. The protagonist watched from a distance, not with malice, not with regret, just indifference. They had moved on. Built a new life. Found peace. But before closing this chapter forever, they sent one last message, short, simple, and devastating. Who's the failure now? No response. Just silence. Because there was nothing left to say. Smirking, they put their phone away and walked forward, never looking back. The past was over. And they had already won.